We're going to move on with a look at what's making headlines around the world in the international papers with Clément Bonnereau. Hi there once again. You're going to be starting us off with The Guardian from the UK. They're looking at those enormous demonstrations in Romania.
That's right. The Guardian says it's a huge victory for people power. Protesters have demonstrated their ability to influence politics for the better. And they've sent a clear message to their leaders: enough with corruption. Romanians want change, transparency, well-functioning institutions and accountability.
Well, as we were discussing with a correspondent in Romania earlier, those demonstrations are continuing, however, which seems to go against the news that we had at the weekend.
That's right. Well, Romanians are dissatisfied about a revised version of the bill, which will now be put to Parliament. And crucially, that's what the Romanian newspaper Romania Libera argues. They no longer trust the left-wing government. They want the Prime Minister Sorin Grindeanu to step down and the leader of the PSD, Liviu Dragnea, to go to prison. He's currently facing charges of defrauding the state of €24,000 and would have directly benefited from the decree.
Interesting indeed. We'll move across now to the United States, never far from the headlines currently. The ongoing battle opposing Donald Trump and the justice system. Donald Trump's accused the judge who blocked his controversial visa ban of being a so-called judge. He also said Americans should blame the courts if, quote, something happens. Some quite vaguely threatening, perhaps, statements there. How's the press reacting?
Well, take a look at this editorial from The Guardian. The headline speaks for itself. Trump plays a populist tune by doubting a court's legitimacy. The British paper argues that Trump's criticism of judges and the justice system should not just be seen as yet another attack against the elites. The Guardian reminds us that previous presidents have sometimes been critical of the Supreme Court, but it's a big jump from attacking the authority and the legitimacy of a sitting judge. The newspaper says that Trump is, quote, hastening a collapse of respect for established institutions.
The press has come in for some fire from him. The press has been overwhelmingly supportive of this judge who's in question. We've seen a lot of cartoons coming out of the newspapers featuring the Statue of Liberty.
That's right, and there's one cartoon in particular that's been shared a lot recently. It was first published on Cartoon Movement. The message is quite powerful. You see here Lady Justice stepping in as Trump is trying to attack the Statue of Liberty. In other words, the only thing that stands in Trump's way and will potentially stop him from hurting America is the justice system.
Powerful, clear to read cartoon indeed. The big question then, I suppose, what could happen if Donald Trump decided to ignore the ruling in some way, reinstate his ban anyway? A lot of people wondering how likely that is to happen.
Well, the Washington Post asks the same question. What if Trump decided that too much was at stake, or that he didn't recognize this so-called judge's authority? Trump so far has given no indication, of course, that he'll actually ignore the court order in question. But given his admiration for authoritarian leaders like Russia's Vladimir Putin, that could well be a possibility. However, if he went down that road, the Washington Post reminds us that Trump would risk impeachment by the House of Representatives, who would then be seen as the guarantors of the US Constitution.
Someone else who's also seen as taking some inspiration from Vladimir Putin, admiring him, and perhaps it's suggested getting some funding from him, Marine Le Pen, the French far-right leader. She officially launched her presidential campaign bid this weekend in Lyon, and the international press is very interested in that.
That's right, and she's on the front page of three British newspapers this morning, including The Independent. You can see this headline, Vive la haine, long live hatred. The American and the British press today is very critical. The Daily Telegraph draws a parallel to last year's Brexit vote. This, as Marine Le Pen is also campaigning on themes such as anti-immigration, protectionism and the EU. Meanwhile, the New York Times warns that Marine Le Pen's victory, who is a passionate admirer of Donald Trump, could usher in a period of major uncertainty for France and the European Union.
To say the least. Let's finish with something very celebratory, very happy times for supporters of the underdogs, or the underlions, as I prefer to call them, the indomitable lions of Cameroon in the Africa Cup of Nations.
Well, Cameroonians are, as expected, delighted. The Cameroon Tribune calls it an astounding victory. They write, the Lions of Cameroon are now once again at the top of the football food chain.
I like that.
And you can read a very interesting article in Le Monde Afrique on Cameroon's coach, Hugo Bross. I'm not quite sure about the pronunciation.
I know, a tricky Belgian name to pronounce.
Absolutely. He's a former football player from Belgium, and he was met with scepticism when he was appointed last year. The Cameroon press was particularly critical, saying he was too old and inexperienced. Now, as Le Monde Afrique notes, he's seen as a national hero, someone who was able to tame the indomitable lions and lead them to victory.
Wonderful story there. You're never too old for a bit of success. Thanks very much. Clément Bonnereau with our International Press Review.